Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. All right, the shutdown is over. At least that's what we are told. The vote last night clearly in favor of reopening the government. Democrats and Republicans still at odds, however, over the question of health care. And that really is the bottom line, isn't it? The Republicans never have favored Obamacare. They've always wanted to deep six it. They've brought that vote before the House of Representatives and the Senate over and over again, over 60 times. And you know what? Obamacare continues to thrive, and the reason is because the American people need it. Now, we now have a situation where the Republicans are saying, well, we'll come up with an alternative. We guarantee you a vote, but we'll come up with an alternative. And of course, they've never come up with an alternative. And as for the vote, look how Congress is divided. The simple truth is, what has happened is that in order to open the government again and take care of millions of Americans who are deprived of their food stamps, millions of Americans who have not been paid, all of the issues involved in a shutdown, what has happened is they've kicked the can down the road again. And so we have till January 30th to resolve these issues. I don't think they're going to resolve the issues. I think the issues are clearly stated. And the American people are going to have to choose in the midterm elections what they want. If we want to maintain Obamacare, and I think we do, then the Republicans, if they cannot come up with an alternative, are going to have to go along with what exists. And that's just the simple reality. And so at least the government's open again, and Donald Trump can attack the Democrats all he wants. But the simple truth is, this is a real divide over the future of healthcare in America. By the way, one other quick note on this that really intrigued me, and that is that Donald Trump does not seem to care about food stamps. He doesn't care about how the American people are fed. Let me remind you, the Republicans have two strikes against them. One is that people rely on health care, and the other is Thanksgiving is coming. You've got to be able to put food on the table for your family, pure and simple. And food stamps play a vital role in all of that. They can call it anything they want, from SNAP to God knows what, but it's food stamps. And it's a program designed to make sure that no one in the United States of America goes hungry. And that makes sense, doesn't it? After all, we are the wealthiest country in the world. We have the greatest food production of any country in the world. We are, without a doubt, the wealthiest nation in the world. So what's the problem here? I guess for the Republicans, it's a matter of principle. But as I like to point out and will point out over and over again, principle's a great thing, but you can't eat principle. And principle doesn't give you good health care. So if the Republicans have an alternative, let's hear it. And if not, well, we've got a problem. Now, there is something called reconciliation, where the House and Senate gets together and tries to figure out a way to make it work so everybody can sing Kumbaya and get along. Maybe it's time for reconciliation. And maybe what has to happen is that the ideologues on both sides have to be willing to really talk practical results. Frankly, I support the Democrats on this. I think they are the big winners as a result of this shutdown, because the American people can see who cares about health care, and the American people can see who cares about feeding America. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, but we're sure going to find out, because those midterm elections are less than a year away. And so we'll have to see how that all happens. But I want to talk about the elephant in the room, the big issue. And you may think this is nuts, but I think it's true. And that is the Epstein case. Now, you all know I've talked about the discharge resolution repeatedly. Well, they have the votes for the discharge resolution, and Speaker Johnson has finally said next week they're going to bring it to the House for a vote on the floor. because he doesn't have a choice. It's not that he likes it. It's not that he wants it. He doesn't have a choice. And let's talk about this for a minute. What is the problem? All the major Republicans, including Donald Trump, Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, until Donald Trump became affected by all this, called for full transparency. And now they're not interested in full transparency because they understand, and we understand, that in the Epstein files, in the materials which are going to be made available, Donald Trump is mentioned over and over again. And the reason is because he and Epstein were friends. They weren't casual friends, as Donald Trump tries to imply. They were close friends, and the evidence is clear about that. Now, that in and of itself is not an indictment of Donald Trump for any wrongdoing. No, it's simply a matter of who you choose as your friends. But let's be clear about something. I worked for Richard Nixon, as many of you know, and it was not Watergate that brought Richard Nixon down. We don't even think Nixon had anything to do with the actual break-in of the Watergate. No. It had to do with something far more important, the cover-up. Now, the question is, why did Nixon try to cover up what happened during the Watergate moments? And the answer is to protect his friends, his supporters, particularly Bob Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, and the others. Nixon fell because he didn't tell the truth. Barry Goldwater once said, if Dick Nixon had just gone before the American people and told the truth, he would have been fine. But, as Barry Goldwater pointed out, Richard Nixon was the greatest liar to ever sit in the White House. Well, up to that point, anyway. What should happen now? The Epstein files will be released. I'm very interested, by the way, to see how many Republicans vote for the release. I think there'll be 40 or 50 who ultimately will come along because with the leadership caving, there's no point in resisting. But what is critical is that there not be a cover-up. Now, what intrigued me yesterday was the White House and the president calling this again, and I'm going to use a term I don't like. They called it a Democrat hoax. It's not a Democrat hoax, by the way. It's Democratic. It's the Democratic Party, not the Democrat Party. And you'll hear me say that over and over again. But it's not a hoax. The Epstein matter is not a hoax. It is a real, profound, dramatic moment in the history of American politics. And by the way, it is not clear how the Republicans are going to respond when all those women who were affected by the Epstein scandal stand up again and say, let's get it all out. If Donald Trump has nothing to hide, if there is no reason for a cover-up, then, as they said in the Watergate days, let it all hang out. Let everyone know the truth. Because, Mr. President, the truth will either set you free or it'll create a lot more problems. So I'm watching what happens now, and I hope you are too. The Epstein case is an indication of something fundamentally wrong in the Trump administration. And that is the White House press office does not represent the president well. Oh, they're representing him the way he wants to be represented. And that, my friends, is a serious issue. So what is the answer on the Epstein matter? The answer is release everything. Let everything out. Make sure the Republicans are on the right side of this. And if Donald Trump has nothing to fear, if there is nothing to hide, no damage. No damage done. But it appears, and appearances matter, it appears that Donald Trump is afraid of something. And that's the reason why the White House is moving to cover up the whole Epstein matter. Now, I know you're going to say to me, John, there are a million other things to talk about. And you're right. There are. But the Epstein matter goes to the heart of the honesty and integrity of this administration. So Speaker Johnson is now going to bring it to the floor. The House will vote. The Republicans will crack. Oh, by the way, did you see yesterday the White House full-on press on members of Congress? Women Republicans, frankly, who they thought could be prevailed upon not to vote for the release of this information. And you'll notice they hit a stone wall because everyone understands that this is a matter which needs to be vetted, aired, and confronted. And if Donald Trump did nothing wrong, then members of Congress who were brought into the Situation Room at the White House yesterday in order to convince them not to vote for full disclosure. Doesn't that tell you something? If there were no fear, there would be full disclosure. Don't you think? Now, that doesn't mean that I'm sitting here to accuse Donald Trump of anything, other than perhaps making a bad choice in friends, but to indicate that really you were just casual friends, you just lived at Mar-a-Lago, and you really had no in-depth relationship, defies what everyone knows. By the way, having a friend is not something terrible. And some of us have had friends who have betrayed them. But to cover up for a reason, which frankly, I find baffling, particularly if you really are pure as the driven snow, well, that's a real question. So we know that the women victimized by Jeffrey Epstein are going to stand together in a public forum. They are going to demand justice, and they're going to demand full disclosure. And I believe they deserve that. I watched when those women stood before the cameras, and to be honest with you, I wept. Those of us who have seen the outcome of sexual assault and taking advantage of women understand the pain that was caused. Let me say a word about Elaine Maxwell, who is now asking to get out of prison. That's what we're here. And what will Donald Trump do? Well, she's already been transferred to a much softer prison, and that is after she met with the White House counsel. Look, something isn't right. And you can imagine what the Republicans would be saying. Oh, wait, I don't have to imagine it. I can remember the Lewinsky matter. Do you remember all the lurid details that came out about Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton? And do you remember the Republicans impeached the then president of the United States, Bill Clinton, over those lurid moments? Why is there a double standard? This should not be a partisan matter. This should be clear and simple. If Donald Trump did nothing wrong, he has nothing to hide. And if he has nothing to hide, then Donald Trump should allow it to all come out. It's a sad commentary on where we are, when in the midst of so many major national and international issues, this issue seems to be, as I said, the elephant in the room. And I do blame the White House. I do blame Donald Trump. I do blame the press office in the White House. Talk about a botched job. Talk about a disaster. What the outcome will be, I can't tell you. I don't think that anything will change what Trump voters really believe, that Trump is pure as the driven snow. But for those who were Nixon supporters and who believed the same thing about Nixon, they changed because the facts proved they had to change. And let's hope, in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, that the Republicans and the people close to Donald Trump understand it is the cover-up, and that's what we're seeing now, at least an attempt at a cover-up. And that, my friends, is a disaster for Donald Trump. And may I add, for the Republicans who've supported him. So let's get it all out. Let's figure out what's going on. And then we can move on to discuss in greater depth the legitimate, real issues that confront our country. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write me a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links for the show, the notes to connect with me on social media. Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. And of course, you now know that this show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on advertising support. This will help us to create more opportunities for Around the Political World, and we're happy to share some enticing offers that you will enjoy. So this means you'll be hearing some fascinating local advertising, and I'm delighted to be able to do that. It'll improve our standing and your listening. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman, and I can't wait to hear your comments and have your support. See you tomorrow.